Hey friends, welcome back to 155 Books. My name is Shannon and today I'm going to be sharing with you another past, present, future reads video because again, I've been reading some really awesome books. So we're going to get straight into it because the first book I want to talk about, I've wanted to talk about since uploading my last past, present, future reads video, because as soon as I uploaded that one, I read this book and I was like, I need to talk to someone about this book. So like I say, it's been a while, but the book I'm talking about is Titus Andronicus by William Shakespeare. So this was the next book on my list for the challenge I'm doing, where I'm trying to read the entire works of Shakespeare in chronological order. And it was one that I was really looking forward to after sort of getting a slight kind of synopsis or understanding of one of the main characters in this after reading another book called Enter the Body, which is a sort of like retelling. And it kind of includes lots of female characters from different Shakespeare plays, and Lavinia from Titus Andronicus is in Enter the Body. And like I say, that is what made me really want to read this, to find out how she ends up in such a mess. So sort of reading this, I knew it was going to be a tragedy. I think I went into it knowing as well it's like one of the most violent and tragic of the Shakespeare plays, and I'm always down for that. I love the tragedies so much. I love it when it's crazy and it's mental, but boy did this one like surprise me. Like I wasn't expecting to be just blindsided basically over how horrific this is, because that is literally the only way to describe this. I was reading it at work and I finished it at work and I was literally sat there and my mouth dropped open and I was looking around to try and find someone to talk to be like, what is happening? What is happening? I also made a joke to my mum while I was reading this of like, oh yeah, it's a Shakespeare play, so obviously this is probably going to happen. And it actually happened, and it was a joke. I wasn't actually expecting it to happen. I am going to give you a brief synopsis of this, and I am also going to spoil it. So if you want a non-spoiler kind of review of this, I would skip on to the next book I'm going to talk about. But yes, this one mainly follows obviously our main character, who is a Roman general called Titus Andronicus. He's just come back from sacking like the city or the towns where all the Goths, I believe, the Queen of the Goths are. He sort of like captures her and her family, so like her sons, and brings them all back to the Roman emperor, and loads of sort of political kind of things happen. So we find out that Titus Andronicus, I think, has killed the Queen of the Goths, like at least one of her sons. So obviously she wants revenge. She ends up marrying the Roman emperor when Titus Andronicus was hoping that he was going to marry his daughter Lavinia. However, the reason why that doesn't happen is because the emperor's brother rapes Lavinia, so then she becomes obviously like tainted, so nobody wants her. And just it's a lot of like political, violent revenge, just crossover here, there and everywhere. And the person obviously it is the worst for is Lavinia. And now I'm going to get into the sort of like very spoilery parts of the play, mainly involving Lavinia's character and everything that she has to go through. So like I say, if you don't want to be spoiled for that, I would skip on to the next book I'm going to talk about. But yes, basically it's just really horrific for Lavinia, as she is raped several times throughout this play. Her hands are cut off, her tongue is cut out, so basically she's mutilated by like the enemy. And then at the end of the play, where they are all sort of in the room and everyone finds out who did that to Lavinia, someone says to Titus Andronicus, if that was my daughter, I would kill myself from shame, or kill her for the shame that she's brought on me. And Titus Andronicus, Lavinia's own father, then kills her. I have no words. I can definitely see why this is labelled as Shakespeare's most violent and horrific play, because of all the ones I have read so far, it definitely is. And like I say, it was something I was not expecting, even though I kind of knew the outcome of Lavinia's character from reading Enter the Body. I'm still gobsmacked by this. It's one that I've read that is very reminiscent of a Shakespeare play. There are some Shakespeare plays that I read that I do believe are actually written by somebody else, but this one definitely had the feel and essence of a Shakespeare play. And I gave it 5 stars because, like I say, I devoured it. I could not stop reading it. I could not put it down. I kind of knew from the very beginning that something horrific was going to happen, and I think that is kind of like peppered all the way through it. It just builds and builds and builds and builds until it's just awful and you just don't know what to say or react or anything. So yes, this one has now made its way up into like my top 5 Shakespeare plays, which, like I say, I was not expecting. I have nothing else to say apart from the fact that even though it was horrific, I really enjoyed it. Moving on to the next book in the past category that I have finished recently, and that is Lord of Shadows by Cassandra Clare. I am powering through these books. So like I say, in the last one I mentioned that I wanted to read this one or pick this one up soon, and I think I read this one faster than Lady Midnight, and I enjoyed it way more than Lady Midnight for all of the reasons I didn't like Lady Midnight. Cassandra Clare gave all of the things I said I missed in this one. Like I mentioned previously, I love it when Cassandra Clare's books are split into parts, and this one is split into 2 parts. It's also massively not set in the LA Institute. As much as I like the LA Institute, I was very happy to see that they were out adventuring all over the place. So in this one, the characters go to the land of fairy, London, so the London Institute, which was a lot of fun, and Alicante. There's at least one character or a few characters that end up there, and it kind of all concludes there as well. This one, as well as Titus Andronicus, I could probably write an essay on how similar these 2 books are. Like, had this sense of it was building and building and building up to something really big towards the end, and the end, like, I'd forgotten. This book reminded me that Cassandra Clare is the queen of insane book endings, because again, I was just sat here on this sofa reading the last like 30 pages in shock, because again, just crazy things just kept happening, and I was sat there and I was like, what is going on? And then I also realised, so again, I'm also going to spoil this one, so if you don't want spoilers for this book, skip on to the next book I'm going to talk about, and I promise there will be no spoilers in that one. Book characters named Lavinia. Pray for them, just pray for them. So at the end of this one, you've got like 2 major character deaths, one of them being Lavinia, which was just absolutely heartbreaking, and I was in absolute shock because I genuinely didn't think that Cassandra Clare would do something like that, and the way it happened was really horrible. The mortal sword gets broken, and just all of this craziness happens, and I was just sat there, and I genuinely, when I finished this book, I did not know what to do with myself because I was in that much shock. But I loved this, it was great. I was messaging loads of people who I hoped had read it to be like, I need to talk about this book and the ending because what just happened. But yes, I'm, again, like I say, really enjoying being back in the Shadowhunter world and with these characters. And like I say, this one gave me what I felt was missing from Lady Midnight. So I think I gave this one 4.5 or 4.5 stars, and Lady Midnight was probably a 4-star for me. Very intrigued to see how Cassandra Clare is going to end this trilogy, and also very scared. And the third book I want to talk about that I finished recently, or like yesterday, is the final volume in Deathnote. So this one was on my summer TBR. I've been making headway with a lot of the books on my summer TBR, which is really good, as obviously I've finished this one. So I started reading this one after finishing Lord of Shadows, and it took me a little while to get into it because I basically didn't want to be reading this. I wanted to be reading the final book in the Dark Artifices series, but I got into this one really quickly, and it was a lot more fast-paced than some of the other volumes, and again, because I could see that it was heading to a conclusion, and a conclusion that I've been waiting for a really long time, I could not put this down, so I've sped through this one. It wasn't an unsatisfying ending. It also wasn't massively a satisfying ending. It was just an ending. Is basically how I would describe this. I am glad that I've read the Deathnote series. Would I reread it? Possibly not. And I would probably give this about 3 stars. So it is one that I would recommend to people. It is a very interesting concept, and one that, like I say, I'm glad that I read, but not one I can see myself returning to. Now moving on to the books that I am currently reading. So like I mentioned previously, I am doing really well with my summer TBR so far. So I've 1 book down with the Deathnote volume, and I'm also currently reading Atomic Habits by James Clear, and I've literally only got like 60 pages of this left, and obviously a lot of that is just like the appendix and references and things, and notes at the end. Also really enjoying this one, which I knew I was going to. Because I'm listening to an audio book, and because it is quite a short book, it packs a punch. It's very simplistic in what it does. There's no like waffle with this one, which, like I say, is really helpful, but because I'm listening to it on audiobook and I'm not giving myself time to sort of sit down and actually take in and maybe make the steps that it's recommending after each chapter, I think I'm going to have to return to this one basically, either by reading it physically, or once I've finished the audiobook, just flip back to the chapter summaries. But another thing I am really liking about this is that I'm realising actually a lot of the things that build good habits are things that I do anyway, and I can, when an example is given by James Clear, I can see in my head, oh yeah, that's what I do when it comes to this, for instance. So for example, every Thursday after work I go swimming, and I do that every Thursday, and it's something that I wanted to do, I did once, and then I just kept up with the habit, and now it's become a part of who I am, so not doing it would just feel weird. And then there's all these sort of like micro steps that add up to the habits that we build and form, both good and bad. So I am enjoying the fact that while I'm listening to this, I can picture, oh yes, actually he's given this example, and I can see where I'm already doing that in my life, so I feel like I can easily build new good habits and break some of my bad ones. So I am feeling positive about this, but like I say, it's just finding the time to actually implement it into my life. The next book I am currently reading is BFF's The Radical Potential of Female Friendship. So this is a little essay, basically, by Anahid Beruz, and this one was given to me by a friend as a birthday present, and I was so excited when I got gifted this for my birthday, because there is a chapter in it on personhood, and I did my dissertation on personhood, and I just love the concept of personhood, and basically anything that is feminist non-fiction that involves personhood, sold. Absolutely sold. But actually reading this one, I'm getting so much out of this, and I'm loving it so much. I've been tabbing it and underlining it, and there are so many recommendations I'm getting out of this. It's less than 100 pages, and my list of TV, film and book recommendations has already like grown 10 times because of all the different ones that are mentioned. Basically, Anahid Beruz does this really amazing job of using, I guess, what you'd call pop culture to explain this idea of how friendship, specifically female friendship, breaks the mold of what society looks upon as a sort of ordinary relationship, because everything else is put into boxes. So you've got sort of like the romantic relationships and like family relationships, but friendships, but like I say, specifically that bond between female friendships and like the best friends and friendship groups, like really strong female friendship groups, don't really fit into any of those. And there's this sort of like confusing mashup with physical intimacy, and it's like a completely different kind of relationship to anything else, and why it's really important. And it's just so good. It has also made me sort of like look back on my life at obviously so many female friendships I've had and relationships I've had that have been questioned by other people throughout my life because they maybe haven't understood the female friendship. I definitely feel like once I've finished this, I may look at some of the other Inklings, big ideas, pocket-sized books and other topics they're talking about, because like I say, this one has been fantastic so far. So now moving on to the books I want to read soon. I'm gonna go through these ones really quickly because they are going to be very obvious. But the first one is obviously Queen of Air and Darkness by Cassandra Clare, which is the third book in the Dark Artificer series, and she is huge. She's chunky. I have actually already started reading this. I've read 6 whole pages because after the end of Lord of Shadows, it just ended on such a big cliffhanger. I couldn't not read a little bit of this just to see where the characters were at after the end of the next one, and knowing that this one does follow on immediately after Lord of Shadows made me kind of relax a little bit more and allowed me to sort of pick up maybe a few other books. But yes, I'm hoping once I've finished some of my current reads, I'm gonna pick this one up, because like I say, I just need to know what's going on and finish this series and be back with these characters and be back in this world, because I'm just enjoying it so much. And next we have a book that I've mentioned both in my summer TBR, so the books I want to read this summer, and also my last, I think it was my last past, present, future reads video. So like I say, I'm going to gloss over it quickly, but I am going to mention Enter Ghost Again by Isabella Hamad. But this one follows our main character Sonia, who returns to her homeland of Palestine after being away for a few years. And there's a few other things going on like that I think are family related, but it's mainly that she then gets involved in a theatre troupe who are performing Hamlet on the West Bank, and obviously that's why I'm intrigued about this, because anything involving Shakespeare, yes please. So those are all the books that I wanted to talk about today. Please let me know in the comments what book you've maybe finished reading recently that you really enjoyed. I feel like I'm just in a really good reading space. I'm really enjoying what I'm reading. And yeah, I'm getting through the books on my TBR, I'm reading the books that I'm saying I want to read. It's just a great time. Thank you guys so much for watching as always, and I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye!